Kicking off our technical session on ERI 2.0 and microelectronics, the ERI Special Assistant to the DARPA Director, Dr. Carl McCants. Good morning. I'm Carl McCants, Special Assistant to the DARPA Director for ERI, and I would like to welcome you to the first technical session of the 2021 Summit. During this session, I will provide an overview of ERI, including the history, current status, recently added programs, and then introduce the research areas we are planning to introduce for ERI 2.0. In addition, we will discuss other U.S. government-wide microelectronics plans, including opportunities under the FY21 NDAA and the United States Innovation and Competition Act, or USICA, also known as the CHIPS Act. To that end, after my talk, Dr. Jason Bain from Nist, Dr. Lisa Friedersdorf from OSTP, Dr. Lloyd Whitman from NSF, and Dr. Andrew Schwartz from DOE will give their perspectives on U.S. government-wide initiatives. Let's begin with a brief look back at the Electronics Resurgence Initiative, or ERI. ERI had its genesis nearly 5 years ago with a recognition that continued U.S. leadership in microelectronics was threatened in both the defense sector and commercial industry. In January 2017, the President's Council of Advisors on Science and Technology, or PCAST, issued a report titled Ensuring Long-Term U.S. Leadership in Semiconductors. The report stated the following: U.S. semiconductor innovation, competitiveness, and integrity face major challenges. Second, a concerted push by China to reshape the market in its favor, using industrial policies backed by over $100 billion in government-directed funds, threatens the competitiveness of U.S. industry and the national and global benefits it brings. Third, the United States will only succeed in mitigating the dangers posed by Chinese industrial policy if it innovates faster. So the timeline that you see shows the evolution from the PCAST report in January 2017, the official beginning of ERI in 2018, the first summit in 2018 in San Francisco, the second summit in Detroit, the virtual summit last year in 2020 due to COVID, to the present summit. So there are 4 major factors that motivated ERI. First is the increased reliance on and strategic importance of advanced electronics for national security and economic competitiveness. As you know, microelectronic components are found in everything from toasters to televisions, mobile platforms to automobiles, but also aircraft to satellites. Second is the offshore movement of advanced manufacturing capabilities. Third is the exploding complexity of microsystems that we see in state-of-the-art CPUs, GPUs, FPGAs, and other system-on-chip, system-in-package configurations. Fourth is the recognition and emergence of hardware security threats that can impact the confidentiality, integrity, and reliability of microelectronics used in both consumer and defense applications. Now, from these, 6 focus areas were proposed. First, increasing information processing density and efficiency. Next, accelerating innovation in AI hardware to make decisions at the edge faster. Third, overcoming the inherent throughput limits of two-dimensional electronics. Fourth, mitigating the skyrocketing costs of electronic design. Fifth, overcoming security threats across the entire hardware lifecycle. And sixth, revolutionizing communications, 5G, and beyond. In looking back at where we were and where we are today, those factors appear even stronger than they did when ERI was initiated, with new trends emerging and consensus need for action to address some of these trends, which include enormous offshore investments in commercial electronics by near-peer allies and adversaries have only grown since the start of ERI, particularly as manifested by the consolidation of leading-edge silicon manufacturing and an increasing footprint into state-of-the-art packaging by pure-play foundries. Next, microelectronics supply chain integrity concerns, spurred by the disruptions due to COVID-19 and the global nature of the supply network. Third, the formation of multinational alliances for 3D heterogeneous integration, or 3D-HI, R&D, and manufacturing. The result is that ERI must continue to strategically invest and seed new approaches and technologies to maintain the U.S. position in electronics systems and technology R&D. Hold that thought for now. We'll return to it in a few minutes. And that's because recognition of the importance of microelectronics technologies has been increasing dramatically within the DoD and other government agencies. Substantial investments in microelectronics has been identified as a key priority within not only DoD but across the whole of government. So let's now jump to the present, looking at current work and accomplishments. So where are we now and how are we doing? This is the 4th annual summit. You may be asking yourself, why does DARPA MTO hold a summit every year? The short answer is that we hold this summit to provide some benchmarks for the progress we're collectively making and to encourage feedback on the technical emphasis and where we might be going moving forward. To recap, there are 6 focus areas in ERI: increasing information processing density and efficiency, accelerating innovation in AI hardware to make decisions at the edge faster, overcoming the inherent throughput limits of 2D electronics, mitigating the skyrocketing costs of electronic design, overcoming security threats across the entire hardware lifecycle, revolutionizing communications, 5G, and beyond. With such a range of potential research topics, you may be asking, what has worked within ERI and what impact has ERI had? I'm glad you asked. ERI has increased participation of non-traditional partners from commercial industry in DARPA programs. ERI has fostered collaborative projects involving 6 of the top 10 semiconductor sales leaders. ERI has fostered collaborative projects involving all 5 top defense contractors. ERI has fostered collaborative projects involving all of the top 10 research universities per U.S. News rankings. Now, dialogue has increased with many of these entities, although we are still striving to increase the base of those participating in our funded research. So let's take a quick look at successes over the past year, which include processor architectures that are more than 100 times faster than standard CPUs and GPUs, the Hive program. Development of programmable hardware architectures to increase processing efficiency, the SDH program. Integration of machine learning into tools for end-to-end electronic design, the IDEA program. Data privacy research to process information while it remains encrypted such that data is protected, DEPRIVE program. FETT bug bounty, DARPA's first crowdsourced leveraging of white hat hackers, the SITH program. Integration of an FPGA core with a photonic transceiver in a multi-chip module, in the PIPES program. Early demonstrations of 22-nanometer FinFETs for specific defense industrial-based applications through the Domestic Foundries program. Provided open licensing with commercial technology vendors to DARPA researchers, the DARPA Toolbox. In addition, over the past year, we have created several new ERI programs in computing, algorithms, filters, and heterogeneous integration. The first is LTLT, Low Temperature Logic Technology. The LTLT program will develop a low-temperature, 77K, device technology to achieve a factor of 25 improvement in performance and power compared to state-of-the-art room temperature CPUs. QUIC, which stands for Quantum-Inspired Classical Computing. The QUIC program will develop quantum-inspired solvers for a factor of 500 improvement over existing techniques in computational efficiency for a broad range of hard optimization problems. The COFFEE program, Compact Front-End Filters at the Element Level. This program will create an integral RF filter technology to mitigate the interference vulnerabilities of wideband microwave active electronically scanned arrays, or AESAs, operating in congested RF environments. ELGAR, Electronics for G-band Arrays. The ELGAR program will develop the integration technologies needed to create compact, high-performance G-band array front-ends to enable DoD communication and sensing phased array systems. So as you can see, we're continuing with the original vision for ERI. Now let's move and talk about the future, specifically ERI 2.0. I will begin by asking, with the benefit of hindsight, what have we learned? First, it is possible to engage the academic, commercial, and U.S. government microelectronics communities in relevant, cutting-edge, dual-use research projects. Second, it is possible to provide leap-ahead capabilities in computational efficiency, heterogeneous integration, hardware security, electronics design, AI components, and secure communications through these collaborations that benefit both the U.S. government and private sector. However, maintaining technical advantage will require continuous innovation. The next question is, what are the trends today that should shape our thinking about future R&B? Trends we have considered over the past year include application-driven trends such as passive sensing, adaptive electronic warfare, technology trends such as novel computing, manufacturing and prototyping, industrial-based trends such as reshoring manufacturing, heterogeneous integration proliferating in products, edge AI growth rate in various commercial market sectors. So again, the question is, what opportunities should we prioritize when planning for the future? As many of you know, DARPA's mission is to prevent technological surprise as well as create technological surprise when an opportunity is identified. This typically involves a longer time horizon than when focusing on translating commercial advances for DoD needs. However, what does this mean for ERI going forward? As the gains from transistor scaling wane over the next decade, what are the new manufacturing paradigms that will appear? What fabrication techniques will be associated with disruption in performance? As you reach the classical quantum limit in transistor dimensions, the importance of microscale packaging increases. What packaging and assembly infrastructure and tool capabilities are needed? What would support automating more of the manufacturing processes beyond the front-end foundry processes? How might an increase in the testing and validation activities for complex SoCs provide feedback to the research more quickly? What aspects of testing might be customized and automated through machine learning, taking advantage of predictive analysis? All these thoughts, combined with well-timed studies, analyses, and a myriad of conversations, have led to the following assumptions. 1. Maintaining U.S. supremacy in semiconductor technologies over the long term will demand national investment in disruptive technologies. 2. Future microelectronics will instead be tied to the ability to design, fabricate, and test and model the performance of complex 3D assemblies composed of heterogeneous microelectronic technologies. And then third, lab-to-fab capability represents an opportunity to accelerate and reshore future manufacturing. Taking all this into account, we are planning the following for ERI 2.0. We will continue innovating the next generation of microelectronics through the initial 6 areas. We will add 2 new areas. The first area is R&D for advanced manufacturing. This includes the design, assembly, testing, and digital emulation of 3D HI microsystems with an emphasis on the following: multi-chip, multi-technology assembly and packaging, tools for design, simulation, and test, security, 3D HI interconnects, and thermal management and power delivery. The second area is electronics for harsh or extreme environments, high radiation, extreme temperature, high power, whether voltage or current. Each of these elements and conditions present their own unique challenges and opportunities. In addition, ERI 2.0 will pursue next-generation microelectronics prototyping. We expect this will do the following: reduce cycle time for R&D and pilot manufacturing for 3D electronics assembly, ensure secure supply chain with a domestic facility and the capabilities driven by future industry needs. Next, provide technology for advanced packaging and assembly with the potential for significant cost reduction in microsystems. The second objective is to emphasize design innovations and enhance the use of manufacturing automation in the package, assembly, and testing process. Dr. Dev Palmer will discuss electronics for harsh environments in more detail tomorrow morning, and Dr. Mark Rosker will discuss next-generation manufacturing and prototyping in detail Thursday morning. So I'd like to end by talking about what's happening outside of ERI, what's changed, and who are our partners. So as DARPA plans for the future of ERI, we have new opportunities for coordination and collaboration with other federal partners. The FY 2021 NDAA authorized many features supporting microelectronics, elements of what was known as the CHIPS Act. While the funding for many supportive measures is still pending in Congress, the features of interest include a plan for increasing commercialization of IP developed by the Department of Defense, the development of multiple models of public-private partnerships, a national network for microelectronics R&D to enable the laboratory to fabrication transition of microelectronics innovations, establishing a National Semiconductor Technology Center, or NSTC, establishing a National Center for Packaging Technology. In the rest of this session, we'll hear from our federal partners in enacting the strategy for microelectronics leadership at Nist, at NSF, and at DOE, and from OSTP, which facilitates across these partners. Thank you for your time and attention during my talk, and thank you to our government partners for participating in this session. And now, presenting Director of the Program Coordination Office at the National Institute of Standards and Technology, Dr. Jason Bain.
My name is Dr. Jason Bain. I'm with the National Institute of Standards and Technology, and I'm here today to talk to you about the planning that the Department of Commerce and Nist has been doing in preparation for the implementation of the CHIPS Act programs that were authorized as part of the National Defense Authorization Act of 2021. So my plan for today is really to give you kind of a quick overview of each of the key programs that the Department of Commerce and the National Institute of Standards and Technology will be responsible for. The Incentives Program, the National Semiconductor Technology Center, the Advanced Packaging Program, increased commitments to metrology research and development, as well as the establishment of a new Manufacturing USA Institute. And I'm going to be able to give you a high-level overview, but as the program is not yet appropriated, and there will be things that I won't be able to go into full detail with, because some of the things we're discussing are still pre-decisional. But I should be able to give you a good view of kind of our goals and what we're hoping to achieve with each of these important new programs. So before I dive into those programs, just let me tell you a little bit about Nist. We are a government-owned, government-operated research and development laboratory, a part of the Department of Commerce. We play a key role in the nation's innovation ecosystem, really focusing on providing the infrastructural infra technologies, if you will, that really help drive technological innovation forward. And we have a very broad research portfolio that covers everything from fundamental research in quantum science to advanced manufacturing and to research affecting climate change. But really at the heart of it, our mission is to really advance U.S. innovation and industrial competitiveness by advancing measurement science, standards, and technology. And with the suite of research capabilities, facilities, and programs that we have that touch every aspect, again, from basic research to manufacturing, I think this makes Nist an ideal place to really take on this challenge of the CHIPS Act programs and help the Department of Commerce with these new responsibilities and exciting opportunities. So Nist also has a long history with microelectronics research. We have a very broad but targeted portfolio of metrology-focused research across the entire stack of the semiconductor ecosystem, working on materials, working on tool development, working on advanced packaging and test issues, and beyond CMOS work as well. We have a very, again, broad and rich targeted research portfolio. And we work closely in partnership with the broader microelectronics and semiconductor research community. DARPA work closely with DARPA on a lot of different projects. We have fund collaborative research, pre-competitive collaborative research with the Semiconductor Research Corporation, and also partners, again, from DARPA and NSF. And we've done this for years as part of the Nanoelectronics Research Initiative program, and continuing today with the SRC NCORE program, which is very similar to the JUMP program, which I'm sure many of you here today are more familiar with. So we have a good sense of the industry, good connections and ties to the broader research community, and this has been very helpful as we've worked to shape our planning. So let me talk a little bit about, of course, why we're here. What are the drivers of the behind the CHIPS program? And I'm sure many of you are already familiar with this, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. But I think this chart kind of really sums it up nicely if I could pick one to kind of focus on, because what we have seen over the past several decades is that the United States, our capacity for manufacturing of advanced microelectronics and semiconductors has been on the decline, a steady decline since the 1990s. At one point, we were about 37% of the R&D capacity, and now today we're about 12% of the manufacturing capacity globally. And while manufacturing capacity around the world is projected to increase quite significantly because there's huge demand for semiconductors and microelectronics around the world, we find that we're in a very difficult competitive position, and that we're not likely, unless we take action to incentivize construction of fabrication facilities here in the United States, it's projected that the U.S. will further continue to drop in share of global manufacturing capacity for semiconductor and microelectronics. And so to make sure that we have that a firm footing, a firm domestic manufacturing capacity in the United States, and to make sure that we have a robust R&D ecosystem, leaders in industry and Congress and government got together and worked on and developed the programs that were called out in the CHIPS Act. And really, that is, at a high level, the key goals, right? One is to make sure that we have and are able to protect and extend our U.S. semiconductor technology leadership, that we continue to have the robust investment in early stage R&D, but that we have the infrastructure to help translate and move that investment in early stage research into development, prototyping, and capture in manufacturing and commercialization. We want to ensure that we have a secure supply of chips for critical sectors, both critical sectors to the economy and for future growth in automotive and in the ICT industry and in healthcare, all the areas where microelectronics are going to be critical, but also for unique defense needs, right? We want to make sure that we have a strong domestic manufacturing capability here in the United States that can also manufacture at the leading nodes and at many of the following nodes as well. And ultimately, we want to be able to promote a long-term, economically viable U.S. industry that has a robust research and development infrastructure, a robust manufacturing sector, and a robust supply chain and upstream and downstream suppliers for this industry. Because at the end of the day, if we lose that manufacturing footprint, if that all moves offshore and we lose key capabilities, then we're going to lose capabilities and workforce, and that will further erode our leadership in research and innovation. So the CHIPS Act programs collectively provide us all the tools we need to be able to address this challenge. So what I'd like to do now is to go into a little bit more detail about where we're at with the planning for implementation of the CHIPS Act, which we're still, again, pending appropriations. And I'd like to talk about each one of the programs that the Department of Commerce is going to be responsible for running. The incentives program, the National Semiconductor Technology Center, the Advanced Packaging Manufacturing Program at Nist, the Nist Metrology programs, and the Manufacturing USA Institute. There are other parts of the CHIPS Act, programs at the Department of Defense, programs with state and others that I'm not going to spend time on today. I'm really going to focus on these key programs, which in our mind are really at the heart of being able to strengthen and ensure that the U.S. has a strong manufacturing and research and development base for the future. So let me start off with the incentives program. So the incentives program is really to address the challenge that we've seen and that I talked about earlier with the manufacturing moving offshore from the United States, with the lack of really leading node capabilities here in the United States. We've seen the challenges that this poses over the past year with the combined impacts of the pandemic, with the issues surrounding the natural disasters, the fires, the ice storms, which all contributed to lead to this kind of perfect storm of consequences that really contributed to the painful semiconductor and microelectronic shortage that we're still dealing with today. But So, those events really demonstrated the current fragility of the global supply chain. So we want to make sure that we can address that. We want to make sure that we have that the U.S. is able to capture a projected share of that expected growth in fabrication facilities across the world, so that we have a stable and significant sector here in the United States that is able to meet our needs domestically and contribute to the broader global economy, of course. And so, at a high level, our goals are we want to make sure that the U.S. does have a portion of chip production capacity at the leading edge. Right now, that is located in Taiwan or South Korea. We want to make sure some of that is located here in the United States. We want to make sure that there is, again, a reliable chip supply for critical sectors, and even in legacy fabs where there's strong demand, like in the automotive sector and other places, we want to make sure that the U.S. has the capacity to meet that demand. And again, we want to protect our U.S. semiconductor technology leadership, and we want to make sure that we have continued capacity and capability in memory as well. So, we're looking to achieve all these, and the investment program will be structured to allocate funds to address these goals. As we're working to design the criteria and the evaluation criteria for the program, we're also looking at how can we tie together the broader set of programs, the broader R&D programs, like, for example, the National Semiconductor Technology Center, which is going to be focused on, helping scale and prototype R&D that's coming from, investments in DARPA and NSF and DOE. How can we prototype and scale some of these designs? We're going to need to be able to access, fabrication facilities, right? So perhaps recipients of these funds may be encouraged to allow a certain number of wafer runs for MSTC-oriented projects. As an example, this is just one example of the kinds of connectivity we're trying to look for as we design the review criteria. Of course, when the program is funded and we have things, we'll be doing a engagement period. We'll be talking about kind of the criteria, how the competition will work, and all that as we get closer to actually being able to implement these programs. So, but unfortunately, right now, I'm not able to go into the great level of detail that I'd like to. So that's the incentives program. That's Section 9902. In Section 9906 of the CHIPS Act, it authorizes a number of research and development focused programs. And the research and development focused programs are really meant to address a set of challenges that are common in just about every technology ecosystem. Really, it's the cliche, but it's known as the valley of death, right? And this is all too true in microelectronics as well as other sectors. But we see the U.S. We have a very strong, robust, early stage research and development ecosystem. Strong programs from DARPA, strong programs from NSF and DOE. Great university infrastructure, great national lab infrastructure, and then we have robust manufacturing capacity and other things. But often it is hard to transition those new innovations into manufacture. It's hard to capture all of that. And really in the microelectronics space, we're lacking some of that infrastructure. And that's what the CHIPS Act R&D programs help do, is they fill this void, they help fill the valley of death. And I'm going to talk about the ones more in depth here in the green. But also the Department of Defense has the National Network for Microelectronics R&D that is also going to play a critical role in helping transition some of the research from the lab to the fab, so to speak. But so let me start off and go through each one of these 9906 programs for you in greater detail. Before I do that, one area that I'd like to point out is that if you look at the language closely across all of these programs, you will see that there's a lot of overlap. For example, if you just focus on the text in the blue boxes, the National Semiconductor Technology Center has to play a role in supporting advanced test, assembly, and packaging capability in the domestic ecosystem. The Advanced Packaging Manufacturing Program, surprise, surprise, has to play a role to strengthen semiconductor advanced test, assembly, and packaging capability in the domestic ecosystem. The Manufacturing USA Center that we are authorized to establish is encouraged to develop new advanced test, assembly, and packaging capabilities, right? So we can see that there are key themes and key issues that cut across all of these programs. So we cannot plan for them as stovepipes in isolation. We're working very hard to make sure that they are integrated, that they have clear handoffs, and that they are leveraging the capabilities that each one can provide, so we are not duplicating resources. So that's something we're being very cognizant of as we begin our planning. So let me first talk about the National Semiconductor Technology Center. Now, this is really one of the core hubs of the CHIPS Act R&D programs. The National Semiconductor Technology Center is really envisioned to be an entity that can help, accelerate and drive research in advanced semiconductor manufacturing processes, design and packaging. We're envisioning it as being able to address challenges really spanning the technology readiness level range of technology readiness level 3 through 8 in support of both economic and national security priorities. As we look at what the focus should be, we wanted to have a core capability around design and infrastructure to support access to design tools and capabilities. It's going to need to be able to have a robust set of fabrication and prototyping tools. It's going to need to be able to have access to advanced packaging, assembly, and test capabilities and facilities. It is also called out to serve as an investment fund and an incubator for emerging and entrepreneurial companies in this space. And it is also called out to focus on workforce and development. So we're still in the process of talking to lots of different stakeholders, gathering input from the community. But there's a lot of lessons learned out there from past approaches, and so we're looking at this. This is going to be competed through a competitive process, whether that is going to be a cooperative agreement or whether it's a different kind of contractual vehicle. We're still discussing, but we do see a competitive process to award to establish the National Semiconductor Technology Center. Likely to a not-for-profit organization or a consortia. But that would be responsible for pulling together these kind of capabilities and developing the capabilities that I mentioned before. And one of the things that we do want to make sure that the National Semiconductor Technology Center has is really kind of close ties to industry, but also independence, because this is going to be a piece of the national infrastructure, right? And so it has to work closely with industry, but it also has to have the independence to be able to try out some new and potentially challenging and transformational research directions as well as working closely with some of the industrial needs as well. So it has to have that right balance. Now, I'm not going to read in detail all the capabilities that we expect the NSTC to provide. You can reach those there. Things about access to design capabilities, access to fabrication and prototyping equipment, the ability to support work in different material systems and non-silicon material systems, again, tie into advanced packaging and heterogeneous integration capabilities. These are all going to be critical. Really, the question comes down to how does the NSTC deliver this? And this is something that we're looking at. And there's a number of models that can be considered. What I've shown here in these kind of crude, simplistic illustrations are not meant to be the whole world, but just to give you a flavor of what the NSTC could potentially look like or how it could function. One could imagine it as a core centralized facility that maintains and owns and operates equipment and facilities and is a hub for places for partners to come and to conduct research and projects and to work on issues related to prototyping and scaling for different research questions. You could imagine it as a hybrid where the NSTC actually has a number of partners and it leverages existing capacity in terms of fabrication capacity or advanced packaging capacity or other kinds of research infrastructure, perhaps metrology infrastructure at Nist or elsewhere from the partner organizations, and that it leverages those, but then yet maybe it does maintain a core set of capabilities as well that is perhaps allows it a certain flexibility if certain partners are unwilling to allow access to certain kinds of projects in their facilities, right? So there's different ways of addressing that. And then another model that could be considered is one that is a fully distributed model where the NSTC is really bringing together the community to identify kind of the core challenges that it's going to take on, but then it is working with partner organizations to get access to perhaps fabrication capacity in an industrial fab, or to get access to testing and characterization capability at another partner's organization. And so it's more providing funding to strengthen those, providing funding to ensure access in a certain number of wafer runs, but it's really then coordinating the research direction and partnerships necessary. So all of these are viable models. Again, as I said earlier, we expect a competitive process. and want to really see the different ideas for what is going to allow us to deliver these capabilities in the best, most efficient way possible. Now, I'd like to move into the discussion of the Advanced Packaging Manufacturing Program. So as I showed you earlier in the slides, there is a lot of overlap and between the different programs. And so we want to make sure that these programs are really complementing one another. And so while we see the National Semiconductor Technology Center as really being kind of a core foundational piece, an entity providing access to all kinds of research infrastructure and capabilities, I think we see the Advanced Packaging Program as really a force multiplier, right? We realize that heterogeneous integration and advanced packaging is going to be a huge driver for innovation across multiple aspects of the semiconductor and microelectronics ecosystem. This has been recognized for years now. There is a lot of room for innovation and really some transformational capability. And it's an area that the United States does need to make sure that we capture that capability and capture that ability in. And so for the Advanced Packaging Manufacturing Program, we would like to see this being able to, perhaps fund capabilities that the NSTC could take advantage of, to fund ongoing collaborations with the Manufacturing USA Institute, to perhaps fund additional packaging capabilities at different facilities, either through equipment or through developing workforce training programs, what have you. But we're really looking to see this as really ensuring that the U.S. is able to maintain a persistent focus on advanced packaging, and that we have the resources and everything necessary to ensure that the U.S. does capture leadership in this space. Moving on to the next program that is called out for the Department of Commerce is really kind of in this sweet spot. Our bread and butter is to enhance our metrology R&D. So as many of you know, measurement science metrology is critical for any manufacturing industry, and it's very critical for the semiconductor and microelectronics industry. And as I mentioned earlier, we've been working with this community for years. So we're looking at ways to expand our capabilities, both in terms of the research we're conducting, both in terms of the types of facilities that we can offer to the broader community, and how we can align these efforts to work best with the National Semiconductor Technology Center, work best with the Manufacturing USA Institute, and other programs, the DoD National Network for Microelectronics, for example. And so, we're obviously looking at kind of front-end metrology challenges, back-end technologies, assembly, packaging, and test issues. We're looking at cross-cutting issues around security, around authentication, automation, and virtualization of processes. You name it. We're preparing for a robust kind of increase to our efforts in this space. Just to give you an example of some of the things that Nist does that many of you may not be familiar with, and one of the unique facilities that we have available, it's only one of two in the world with this kind of capability, is that Nist has what we call the SURF facility, or the synchrotron ultraviolet radiation facility. And this has played a critical role in the development of EUV lithography technology since the 90s. And it's developed characterization for mask multilayers. It's been a primary facility to test EUV photoresist outgassing, study the optic contamination, cleaning processes, to look at lifetime of the optics and what have you. So I think Nist can offer a number of unique capabilities that are really critical to the tool makers and to the designers that can help advance their capacity that ultimately supports the broader manufacturing ecosystem. So this is just one example of the types of things that Nist hopes to provide in this space. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this slide, but obviously, we would also expect to offer new reference materials, new types of material test structures, new types of metrology capabilities for unique material systems. The final program I'd like to talk about that's authorized under the NDAA as part of the CHIPS Act that Commerce would be responsible for is creating a Manufacturing USA Institute, or perhaps institutes that are focused on the unique manufacturing challenges of the semiconductor industry. So the Manufacturing USA program is well established now, been around for several years now, since the Obama administration. It establishes kind of core research hubs, industry-led consortia, public-private partnerships, that are focused on specific manufacturing R&D challenges in different industrial sectors. We have ones in the automotive sector, ones on lightweighting, ones on looking at different energy technologies, biofabrication, biomanufacturing, you name it. And so it would only be fitting to have one or more addressing some of the unique manufacturing challenges of the semiconductor manufacturing industry. Right now, there's a network of 16 institutes across the country, which Nist runs the office that coordinates those. And these institutes are funded by a combination of Nist or DoD or DOE. And Nist is expecting to fund a number of more. And if we get the CHIPS Act funding, we will definitely fund one in this space. And each institute kind of follows a common model where they provide a common set of shared use facilities, conduct research on applied research questions, and also provide capabilities for workforce training and workforce development opportunities. Which is going to be another critical issue for the United States in this field as well. So where do things stand right now? So right now, there's definite bipartisan support for funding for the CHIPS Act. It's been a priority for the president and the administration, who called out for full funding of the CHIPS Act programs under as part of his American Jobs Program. The Senate took action very early with the passage of the U.S. Innovation and Competitiveness Act, which actually did provide appropriations for the CHIPS Act programs of up to $52 billion. You can see how they're kind of broken out here. A total of $39 billion for the incentives program over 5 years, and a total of $11.2 billion over 5 years for the combined research programs that I just went through. Now, we're still waiting to see how the House bill looks and what the levels are there, and if there are any changes to this kind of layout or allocation. But we do expect that to happen in the near future. We're very hopeful that it happens. But right now, we're kind of in this period of waiting to see what the full funding is going to look like for the programs. That said, we are being very aggressive in terms of planning for potential implementation. As you can imagine, to implement a series of programs of this size and complexity is going to require some new infrastructure of its own. And so we're planning for the establishment of a CHIPS Act program office within the Department of Commerce at Nist to provide the infrastructure to support and run these programs. And so as we're doing that, I just want to comment that there are going to be, when these are funded, a lot of opportunity for jobs and where we're going to need the community's help, right? So looking at kind of four main areas: leadership for the programs. We're going to need definite expansion of administrative capabilities in terms of grants management and contracts and compliance issues. We're going to need expanded efforts around communications, external relations, government relations, public affairs, and we're going to need, most important of all, of course, program managers, people with experience in managing large programs, people with experience in the industry and the research and development ecosystem for the semiconductor and microelectronics industry. And so, we're working on preparing as much as we can to be ready to hit the ground running when the appropriations come. And if any of you are interested, please, I would urge you to send your name and details to the email address there at the bottom of the screen, chipscareers@nist.gov. This is just really to notify us that you're interested, and then when we can, we will release any notifications of jobs and opportunities that are available as soon as we're able to do that. So I just want to thank you for the opportunity to go over where we're at today. I think there's a lot of exciting opportunities ahead of us, and I look forward to hearing from you and working with all of you. Thank you very much.
Next up, Assistant Director for Microelectronics, Materials, and Nanotechnology at the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy, Dr. Lisa Friedersdorf.
It is my pleasure to be here at the 2021 DARPA ERI Summit and MTO Symposium. I've enjoyed this event in the past, learning about technical advances from performers and hearing about future directions from industry leaders. But this year, the summit is especially important as it brings together the microelectronics community at a time when we are actively preparing for our future. Recent supply chain disruptions have raised public awareness of something this community has known for a long time, that semiconductors and microelectronic chips are critical for nearly all aspects of modern life and essential to our economic and national security. As noted in the 100-day supply chain report in response to President Biden's executive order, America's approach to resilient supply chains must build on our nation's greatest strengths: our unrivaled innovation ecosystem, our people, our vast ethnic, racial, and regional diversity, our small and medium-sized businesses, and our strong relationships with allies and partners who share our values. Also noted is the need for the administration to double down on our innovation infrastructure, reinvesting in research and development and accelerating our ability to move innovations from the lab to the marketplace. Both of these points are particularly relevant to this summit where the microelectronics innovation community is gathered. There is a whole of government effort underway, and several White House components are working together to advance and coordinate interagency efforts to protect and extend U.S. technology leadership and to promote the long-term economic viability of the U.S. semiconductor industry, including in research and development, manufacturing, and other critical aspects of the supply chain. I will focus my comments today on the R&D components of these efforts. The U.S. has long been the innovation leader in microelectronics, and it is imperative to maintain and advance leadership in this important area. Past R&D investments by industry and government have fueled decades of rapid innovation in the semiconductor industry, now reaching once unimaginable levels of miniaturization and complexity. Perhaps not just pushing through the red brick wall, but going under, over, and around it with innovation. These advancements have been enabled by continuous breakthroughs in device design, architectures, materials, and advanced tools. As we move past scaling into an era where we're seeing a vast expansion in the diversity of applications in microelectronic technologies, we need to ensure we have a vibrant research and development ecosystem to not only fuel new discoveries, but to facilitate their transition to industry. Several federal departments and agencies support research and development related to microelectronics, from early-stage discovery-based research through applications-focused research, development, and deployment based on their respective missions, roles, and responsibilities. To coordinate these efforts, the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy recently established the Subcommittee for Microelectronics Leadership under the National Science and Technology Council. This subcommittee is also a forum to connect to and leverage resources of related efforts, such as the National Nanotechnology Initiative, the Networking and Information Technology Program, and the National Quantum Initiative. For example, the NNI user facilities serve a critical role enabling microelectronics researchers to fabricate and characterize materials and devices. Currently, however, researchers face challenges accessing the required infrastructure for systems-level prototyping and scaled demonstrations. The CHIPS for America Act authorized several programs to help bridge this lab-to-fab gap. We know the various elements of this infrastructure need to be closely connected to enable seamless transitions between the facilities as innovations traverse the technology development pathway. This infrastructure also plays a vital role in providing hands-on training for researchers and students that will form the future semiconductor workforce. Another important task of the subcommittee is the development of the National Strategy for Microelectronics Leadership. To this end, we are looking carefully at how to build, strengthen, connect, and support the full microelectronics R&D ecosystem. This ecosystem is complex and global and will involve working closely with our allies and partners. Success will require active engagement among the entire community, including academic researchers and educators, small and large companies across the full supply chain, as well as government representatives. I hope you enjoy the summit, and I look forward to working with you on the important task before us.
Now presenting Assistant to the Director for Science Policy and Planning at the National Science Foundation, Dr. Lloyd Whitman.
Hi, I'm Lloyd Whitman, the Assistant to the Director for Science Policy and Planning at the National Science Foundation, and I'm happy to participate in the ERI Summit and welcome its community of researchers, developers, and educators driving innovation in electronics. I've prepared this short presentation to give you a very brief overview of NSF's role in the electronics R&D ecosystem. Ensuring continued innovation in electronics is truly an all-hands-on-deck objective, and multiple federal agencies have roles to play. Success will require a continued coordination collaboration, not only between agencies, but also in partnership with others in the public and private sectors. And that's a good pivot to bring up a few slides and talk about NSF and its role in supporting innovation in this area. NSF is the funding source for approximately 25% of the total federal budget for basic research conducted at U.S. colleges and universities. In many fields, such as mathematics, computer science, and the social sciences, NSF is the major source of federal funding. Another essential element in NSF's mission is support for education, from pre-K through graduate school and beyond. NSF has a current budget of $8.5 billion, and each year we evaluate about 43,000 proposals and make about 12,000 awards to 2,000 institutions. Let's take a look at the next slide and investments NSF makes relevant to electronics. NSF supports broad basic research, more focused, use-inspired basic research, and research infrastructure across the full computing stack. It's an all-of-science approach, from basic materials and devices to advanced and future manufacturing to understanding user needs in industry economics. We're always looking for input. In fact, we just recently closed an RFI on computer science needs for semiconductor research and education, but we continue to welcome responsive input on that topic. Among the research infrastructure we support is the National Nanotechnology Coordinated Infrastructure, an array of university-based open access user facilities. We also heavily invest in education and workforce development, from lab technicians to PhDs, postdocs, and new faculty. A key priority in NSF is to continue to expand our partnerships, especially as a way to build multi-sector coalitions and create regional centers of excellence. A good example of such partnerships is our AI Institute program, jointly funded and run with USDA, the Department of Homeland Security, the Department of Transportation, and industry partners including Accenture, Amazon, Google, and Intel. Now let's take a brief look at NSF's structure, which will help explain the breadth of programs and projects we support. NSF supports research through 7 directorates and 2 offices, and one can find electronics-related investments in all of them. For example, in bio, you'll find investments in bio-based devices and systems. In geo, projects related to critical minerals. MPS is a major supporter of material science and materials chemistry, among other things. EHR supports workforce development, including the skilled technical workforce. Engineering supports advanced manufacturing, again, among many other topics. Even SBE is involved in basic research related to supply chains and logistics, a topic we've heard a lot about lately. SIZE invests in some way in the full stack, from device design all the way to leadership class computing systems. The reason research is spread across the foundation relates to how research priorities are identified and projects are evaluated and funded at NSF, which I'll discuss next. Now, part of my job is answering this question: what does NSF support in Area X? NSF funds a mix of fundamental research and use-inspired, solutions-oriented research, but even in the use-inspired programs, we rarely specify very narrow technical objectives. The key factor in this process is our deep collaboration with our broad community of stakeholders, especially the academic research community. That collaboration, including peer-based merit review processes, ultimately determine which proposals have the greatest intellectual merit and will have the broadest impact. So we have a virtuous cycle where we solicit input, identify priorities, issue solicitations, have the peer review process, which determines which proposals should be funded, those projects then advance the field, and we continue new priorities. So let me talk about a few of the specific project examples from a much larger set across NSF that have come out of this process. For example, on the material side, we have DMREF, our classic material science program that's funding a broad range of things. Just for an example, you would find projects related to topological materials in that program. In SemiSynBio 2, for example, a bio-related program, we're funding research on DNA as a data storage material. In the space of energy efficient device and computing related examples, we have our joint program we've run with DARPA on real-time machine learning, and another joint program done with the Semiconductor Research Corporation on energy-efficient computing from devices to architectures. In manufacturing, we have a great workforce project example from our Advanced Technological Education program, where SUNY Poly and Global Foundries work together to create an industry-approved apprenticeship program. I mentioned the AI institutes earlier, and one of those just announced in September is the AI Institute for Advances in Optimizations, led by Georgia Tech, which includes as one of its focus areas circuit design and control. Finally, as part of NSF's cycle of identifying where the needs are in this research area, we've sponsored 4 recent workshops with reports either released or forthcoming. And with that, I'll repeat my email address and encourage anyone with a question or looking for more information to reach out to me, and I'll respond or connect you with someone who can. I'll thank you all for your attention, and thank you for joining me.
And closing out this session, Senior Technical Advisor for Energy Frontier Research Center at the Department of Energy, Dr. Andrew Schwartz.
Hello, I'm Andy Schwartz from the DOE Office of Science. I'm speaking to you today on behalf of 5 program offices within the Office of Science: Basic Energy Sciences, Advanced Scientific Computing Research, Fusion Energy Sciences, High Energy Physics, and Nuclear Physics. Semiconductor and microelectronics R&D is supported across DOE as it underpins all aspects of the DOE mission in energy, in science and innovation, and in nuclear safety and security. My remarks today will focus on basic research supported by the Office of Science. For decades, research supported by the DOE Office of Science has produced scientific understanding that has been the foundation for technological breakthroughs. In addition, we have been a user of these leading-edge technologies. For example, DOE user facilities such as X-ray light sources will require edge computing to manage the rapidly increasing data rates and volumes. And advanced devices will be necessary to enable computing at exascale and beyond, as well as a smart electricity grid. As I just noted, DOE's largest facilities and instruments rely on the availability of advanced microelectronics to maintain state-of-the-art capabilities. High-performance computing requires leading-edge devices, architectures, and algorithms. Innovations at the material, device, circuit, and architectural levels are needed to integrate sensors and front-end electronics for rapid data collection, compression, and analysis. These challenges are anticipated to increase dramatically in the coming decade. Many of the challenges I've just outlined require new foundational scientific understanding. To address this, in 2018, the DOE Office of Science held a workshop on basic research needs for microelectronics. The participants in this workshop, from academia, national labs, and industry, identified 5 priority research directions in which investments are needed to meet the coming challenges. First, we must define material, device, and architecture requirements that are driven by applications. Second, a need to revolutionize memory and data storage. Third, reimagine unconstrained information flow. Fourth, to exploit new physical phenomena to redefine computing. And finally, to reinvent the grid through new materials, devices, and architectures. The report from this workshop is available on the DOE website. This workshop report also highlighted the need to reimagine the way in which we innovate, moving away from the historical sequential R&D process shown on the left toward a co-design approach in which the various disciplines engage and inform each other with multi-directional information flow, as indicated by the graphic on the right. Based on this report and other strategic planning activities, in 2020, DOE began to expand investments in this area with the announcement of 2 new Energy Frontier Research Centers supported by Basic Energy Sciences. These Energy Frontier Research Centers are designed to bring together teams, multidisciplinary teams of researchers to attack the most difficult problems in science that could impact technology. The first center is the 3-dimensional Ferroelectric Microelectronics Center, led by Penn State University, which aims to enable low-power, non-volatile ferroelectric memory for enhanced functionality. The second, led by Arizona State University, is Ultra Materials for a Resilient Smart Electricity Grid Center, which will expand our understanding of ultra-wide bandgap materials to enable a resilient and smart electricity grid. More recently, in August of this year, the DOE Office of Science announced 10 new projects led by DOE National Labs and focusing on co-design R&D in 3 broad topical areas: materials, chemistry and synthesis and fabrication, new computing paradigms and architectures, and integrated sensing, edge computing, and communications. These projects are supported collectively by 4 programs in the Office of Science: Advanced Scientific and Computing Research, Basic Energy Sciences, Fusion Energy Sciences, and High Energy Physics. The 10 projects that are ramping up are shown here, along with the lead labs for each one. I don't have time to discuss these in detail, but many of these involve partnerships with other labs, with academia, and with industry. The DOE Office of Science hopes that these will be the seed for expanding investments in fundamental R&D to drive US innovation in the microelectronics space. On behalf of all of my colleagues at DOE, thank you very much for your attention and your interest.
This concludes our morning presentations. During the break, please visit the exhibit halls to interact live with poster and demo performers via chat and video. The afternoon technical sessions will begin at 1:30 p.m.